world was not designed around your success. Let that settle without bitterness, because bitterness is not the useful response to it. The useful response is clarity. The system was built to produce average outcomes for the average person who follows the average path without asking too many uncomfortable questions about where the path actually leads. The people around you are not conspiring against your potential, but they are also not losing sleep over whether it gets realized. The employer wants your hours. The platform wants your attention. The culture wants your compliance with whatever the current version of normal happens to be. None of these forces are thinking about the specific young man reading this and what he is uniquely capable of becoming if he decides to take his own development seriously. That thinking belongs to you alone. Nobody else will do it with the same stakes attached, because nobody else is living inside the consequences of whether it gets done or not. The moment this lands not as a complaint about the world, but as a clarifying fact about whose responsibility the life is, everything shifts. The version of everyone that you are up against is not a collection of enemies. It is a collection of forces that are simply indifferent to your particular direction and will shape you toward their purposes if you allow them to operate without conscious resistance. The gravity of the group that pulls toward the average. The gravity of the comfort that pulls toward the easy. The gravity of the approval seeking that pulls toward whatever gets the most immediate positive response from the people around you, regardless of whether that response is pointing in the right direction. These forces are not malicious. They are just stronger than most people realize and more constant than the periodic moments of motivation that most people rely on to counteract them. The you versus everyone framing is not about hostility. It is about awareness. The awareness that the default pulls of the world are not pulling toward your best life, and that something deliberate and sustained has to counteract them, or the default wins. The loneliness of going your own way is real, and it needs to be named honestly, rather than dressed up in the language of strength and solitude that makes it sound more romantic than it actually feels. There will be periods where the direction you are moving in separates you from the people you were moving with before the direction changed, where the choices you are making are different enough from the choices of the people around you that the shared reality you used to inhabit starts to feel less shared, where you are doing the work in private and the results are not yet visible enough to justify the work to anyone watching, and the watching is skeptical, and the skepticism is lonely to be inside. This is not a sign that the direction is wrong. It is the specific texture of the period between leaving one version of your life and arriving at the next one. It is temporary in the sense that all difficult phases are temporary. But temporary does not mean short, and short does not mean easy, and easy was never what this was going to be. Some young men reach a point in the loneliness and the pressure and the gap between where they are and where they feel they should be, where the weight becomes something they consider not carrying anymore. If you are in that place right now, this paragraph is written directly to you, and it needs to land before anything else. The weight you are carrying has convinced you that you are the problem when you are not the problem. The problem is the weight, and weight can be put down, not by ending the story, but by changing what chapter you are in. The story that ends early never finds out what the later chapters contained, and the later chapters of the lives of men who nearly ended their own story early are almost always the chapters that justified every moment of the ones that came before. You are not too far gone. You are not beyond the reach of something better. You are in the hardest chapter. The hardest chapter is not the last one unless you decide it is. Please do not decide that. The men who came through the darkest version of the you versus everyone feeling and built something real on the other side of it did not come through it because they were stronger than you. They came through it because they stayed long enough for the chapter to change. Staying is the whole move when the darkness is at its deepest, not performing wellness, not pretending the weight is not real, just staying, one more day, then another, and in the staying giving the next version of the life the chance to become visible in a way it cannot become visible from inside the decision to leave. The version of your life that exists 6 months from the darkest moment you have ever been in is a version you cannot currently see clearly because the darkness distorts the distance. Trust the distance more than the darkness. The darkness is a condition. The distance is a journey. You have not taken it yet. Take it. You matter in a way that is specific and not replaceable, and this is not a comforting phrase assembled to make you feel better. It is a literal statement about how identity and contribution work. The particular combination of what you have been through and what you notice and what you care about and what you are capable of producing when you finally commit to it fully does not exist in any other configuration, in any other person on the planet. The thing that only you can make, the perspective that only you carry, the connection that only you can offer to the specific people whose lives will intersect with yours in the chapters ahead. None of that gets made if the story stops early. The world does not always know what it is missing when a voice goes quiet. But the missing is real. Your presence in the world is not redundant. It is specific. Specific things cannot be replaced. They can only be lost.